Welcome to the Collaboration and Tools track. We're really excited to have you here. My name is Ada Chen, and I will be your MC for this track over today and tomorrow. So we've got a great mix of sessions, and we will be hearing from Atlassians as well as some of our customers. And as you probably know, you heard it in the keynote, we are all about teams here at Atlassian. So ensuring that everyone's on the same page, making sure that everyone's still in constant communication, keeping conversations going, that's key to success in moving work forward. So in this track, you'll be learning about the tools and practices that we use, as well as some of our customers, to help your entire organization. Before I hand it over to the speakers, just a few housekeeping notes. If you could right now, please make sure to silence all of your cell phones and then put them on vibrate. If you need to take a call, step outside. If you are coming in, make sure to slide into the middle so that folks can come in after you. If you haven't already, make sure to download our Summit app. It's the best way to keep on top of the agenda and figure out where you're going. If you do see a session in the agenda that you add to your personal agenda, that does not reserve a spot, so make sure to get to the rooms on time or a little bit early. And if time remains at the end of this session, we will have live Q&A, so I'll run the mic out to you. And also in the app, you'll get prompted to take a survey at the end of this session. So we'd love for you guys to give us some feedback on what you thought. And I'm pleased to welcome today our first speakers of the day, Jess Barnett and Brian Cervino from the Trello team. Fun fact, as they walk up, Jess was homeschooled, and she's here today to school you on Trello. And the last time Brian was on a stage like this with his band, he definitely fell into the crowd, which is not going to happen today. Welcome.
Hey there, thanks for the intro. I'm Brian.
And I'm Jess.
And today we're here to talk to you about how you can build Trello boards to literally tackle any project that comes your way. So a quick show of hands in this room. How many people here use Trello?
Yay.
Nice. We're at the Big Bash together on Wednesday and asked the question again. I'd like to see every hand in the air, please, because Trello is awesome, and we know it can be great for anything you do in life.
So we want to do something a little bit silly, but hopefully not too silly. So I took over the Trello Instagram today, and I thought it'd be really fun for you guys to just say hi to thousands of Trello fans all over the world.
All over the world.
You guys
Let's
game?
Give them a big shout.
All right, we're going to do it. On the count of three, everyone say...
Hello, Trello.
Hello, Trello. All right, 1, 2, 3...
Hello, Trello! Thanks. All right, now that we're pumped up. Let's get into this.
Okay, let's do it. So we think Trello is special because it can be used to plan any of life's projects for work, your personal life, and everything in between. Whether your team is your colleagues, your family, your friends, or the soccer team that you help coach, Trello can help you collaborate more effectively and bring perspective to your work. Just FYI, Trello is available on the web, on your iOS devices, your Android devices, and we also have a desktop app. Plus, our mobile apps, thanks, Sarah, work offline, so you can reference your stuff and make updates everywhere, from the boardroom to the beach.
So here's a little rundown of what we'll be covering today. We're going to start with some basics on what Trello even is for those that aren't using Trello and want to get familiar with it. We're going to talk about 5 big ways to use Trello, and then we're going to give you some tips and tricks so that you can get your boards going.
So first, a little background on what Trello is. Trello is made up of boards, lists, and cards. Boards are flexible containers that you can collect stuff about just about anything. Boards are made up of lists, which are typically ways to organize categories or steps in a process, and lists contain cards, which is generally a bit of information or maybe a task. Together, people use Trello boards to do everything you could imagine. Here's an example of one of the most basic board structures you can get. It's made up of to-do, doing, and done, where cards start in the to-do list, move to doing when they're in progress, and then finally end up in done when they're complete. So here's an example of a structure in the real world. Let's pretend like, hypothetically maybe, we were going to speak at Summit. We'd want cards for prepping our session, getting to Barcelona, other stuff like that. And since Brian and I are doing these things together, we're both added to these cards. With Trello, you can add 1 or more people to cards because you're working on it or interested in it. It's super flexible. So we can see at a glance what's going on and move our cards to done as we make progress. Oh, look, I guess we're giving the presentation right now.
Although, honestly, I'm more excited about what's next on our to-do list.
Big bash. Okay, moving right along. With cards and lists alone, you can do just about anything. However, Trello can be so much more, and that's really what we're here to show you. Here are a couple other features that we'll be talking about a bunch today. So labels allow you to visualize cards by type and can be filtered to surface the cards that are most relevant to you. You can add checklists to cards to break down bigger tasks into its individual parts so that nothing important slips through the cracks. And you can add some visual flair and delight to your boards with stickers. Power-ups are awesome ways to add all sorts of functionality to your Trello boards or integrate other apps and services like Jira, Slack, Confluence, Bitbucket, and more.
Okay, so now you know the basics. Let's get to the main event here. This is why we're on the stage. From talking to our users and from using Trello basically all the time at work ourselves, we figured out that there are 5 fundamental board structures that can empower teams to tackle really any type of project.
Okay, so here are the 5 big types: track, store, share, discuss, and mix and match. Tracking boards are for managing projects with different phases. Storing boards are for keeping track of different reference materials. Sharing boards give information to people and groups, generally outside your team, but not always. We'll talk more about that. And discussion boards help make more effective meetings and conversations. Mix and match boards blend parts of all the other types for a custom-tailored board to fit your exact team's needs.
And right before we dive in, just want a couple FYIs. We always get asked, am I doing this right when it comes to using Trello? And the good news is there's really no wrong way to use Trello. This whole talk is really just inspiration. We're going to set the scene for just ways that boards can be created. But really, ultimately, you and your team can make Trello your own. You can configure Trello and figure out how to build the workflows that really work for you. And also, all of the boards we're going to show today are based on real boards used by real teams. And where we can, we will actually show you the real board.
Okay, so let's dive in and talk about some real examples. Tracking is the most popular way that we see people using Trello. Tracking boards are used for short and long-term processes or projects. The most basic form is a list structure like to do, doing, and done, like the board we showed you earlier, but it can be expanded to accommodate your team's needs. Cards typically start in the leftmost list and move towards the right as they progress towards completion. So I don't know if we mentioned this already or not, but Brian and I actually really do work together a lot in the real world, including on the launch of emoji reactions for Trello. As the product manager of the core team, I am tasked with helping build out the key features that are part of every Trello user's experience.
So the emoji reactions go-to-market board is a textbook track example. The go-to-market phase is where we prepare everything we need to launch the product to users, press, and the world. This includes blogs, social media, PR, help docs, and much more.
So basically, we had a bunch of things that we needed to do, and we needed to move everything from to do to done.
And for every marketing asset that we needed to create, we added a card to our to-do list. Each card held all the information, images, and attachments and documents for the work that needed to be done on that asset.
So that kept everything organized in one centralized location so that everyone on the team had a single source of truth and didn't need to ask around or dig around for anything to figure out where things were located.
This project was also rolled out in 2 phases, so we used the labels feature to categorize tasks by phase. This made it really easy to filter the board for just phase 1 tasks so we could easily see the status of those most timely tasks that we had to prioritize. And also, really with Trello, it's easy to keep everything related to a card in one place. And so you can drag and drop all your attachments right onto a Trello card. So anything images that need to be referenced. Another thing that's useful is linking cards to each other. In this case, while we had this short-term go-to-market board for all the details of the reactions launch, the marketing team also has an editorial calendar that they rely on for every post on the Trello blog. And so to make sure that everyone stayed in sync across these Trello boards, we were able to link the 2 Trello cards to each other from this go-to-market board over to the editorial calendar board, so everyone can easily click back and forth between the boards and get to either task they need to work on. So here you can see the linked card on the editorial calendar, and at the bottom you can see in the Trello attachments is the card that goes back to our go-to-market board.
So speaking of editorial calendars, it's a really great lightweight process.
Yeah, so here's an example of an editor calendar board that's pretty similar to the Trello teams. We use this to track all of our blog posts all the way from ideas to publishing. Each card represents an article and gets tracked as it moves through different stages in a process, like copy edits, graphics, and promotion.
So basically, this takes the concept of to-do, doing, and done, but it expands it to this team's unique needs, with a list for every stage in their process.
And also, since this team is very deadline-oriented, they can easily toggle a calendar view with a calendar power-up, and then see everything laid out in a date structure.
Here's another example, an IT support board that tracks incoming requests from team members. So here you can see they have a list for incoming, to-do, waiting, shipping, done, et cetera. These are all the things that a team member has requested throughout the entire organization. And it uses one of my favorite power-ups, Package Tracker, which shows you the status of deliveries on the card front, and then all the details about it on the card back. Super helpful. Trello boards are also a great way to store information. Cards tend to not move through a process on a storing board, per se, but instead are sorted into categories. Unlike what you might currently be using to store things, Trello comes in super handy for a couple big reasons. So first of all, they're very visual. It's easy to organize and find cards by subject. And second of all, they're super easy for anyone to update and maintain a living document. Plus, you can attach files, links, images, Confluence pages, and more to these cards to create a centralized repository of team information. On the core team, we created a handy board to help onboard new team members. We filled it with all sorts of things you would need to get started on the team. We have a list for who's on the team. Look, there's me and Brian. A list of our standing meetings, a list of helpful tools you'll need to get started, additional helpful resources, and so on. You guys get the idea. When new folks start on the team, it's definitely made their lives a whole lot easier. Plus, since we ask new team members to add any new things they find and update anything that might be outdated, it stays accurate, and it's actually a helpful resource for the entire team.
Another example of a board storing information is using Trello board essentially as an employee manual. And what this creates is a living document that's always up to date and accessible by employees anywhere, like say when you're traveling for work and you want to look at the meal policy, or you're at the dentist and need to access a form. It really allows you to say goodbye to those dusty, outdated, printouts and PDFs of yesteryear. And the benefit of this is that when you update one card, as say like a policy changes, everyone that's on the board working in your organization gets that update instantly and can access that information instantly in real time.
I need it offline.
And also at Trello, here's another example of a way we store information. This is an employee directory board. It's called the Who's Who board. So what we do is we have different lists for each department and labels for where folks are located, one for each office, and then also for our remote team, which makes up about 70% of our team.
Give you guys another second. So everyone fills out their cards and, of course, keeps them updated. This makes it so much easier for the team to all get to know each other and better put names to faces. Here's a little bit about me. Really proud of all those emoji.
And by the way, I just want to give a shout out for tomorrow. If you want to learn more about setting up a company directory with Trello, join us for our first ever Trello Day. It's going to be an entire day dedicated to all things Trello. And you can learn about how Typeform actually inspired our Who's Who board. And you can learn from Typeform how they did this very thing. It's going to be at 11:20 in room 10. And Trello Day is free and open to everyone with a Summit Pass. So in room 10 all day, we'll have talks all about how you can set up Trello boards.
So Trello boards can also be super helpful when you're mostly sharing information with other people. Whether you're sharing information with people on your team, on other teams within your organization, or with external stakeholders, or maybe even the public, consider this board structure. Opening up as much information as you can will really help build transparency. Often, boards like this might even start at the very top of your organization and let folks drill down to get more information. One awesome perk of this approach is that you can track the projects that you're working on across an entire organization against company-wide goals, stay informed, and of course, celebrate together when things ship.
So here's an example of a Trello board that we use to share information that starts at the very top of our organization. And it allows everyone in the company to see the biggest projects going on at a glance. Since we link to related cards and boards, anyone can get into the nitty-gritty details if they want to dive into those boards set up for these individual projects. So Trello's company overview board has cards for each team and for each project that is being worked on across the company. So everyone can see what projects are up next, what's currently being worked on, and what's been completed. Each card is updated weekly on this board with a comment from the project stakeholder so that everyone across the company can get a high-level understanding of the project's progress. And we don't have to bother anyone else, or no one has to ask questions. It's all right there. We also use this in the Slack power-up to pipe this information right into a dedicated Slack channel for our company overview so that everyone can also see if they're in Slack, everything that's being updated. And also on this board, every team has their own label color. And this makes it easy to identify projects based on the team. But you can also use labels maybe to track different cross-team OKRs or goals, and then you can filter to see how the current project status aligns with your company goals.
We always have a card for each project where we attach the related boards, Confluence pages, or Jira issues to make it easy for anyone who wants to see the play-by-play. And they're regularly updated by someone on the project. Here's an example. This was our card on the Trello overview board when we launched emoji reactions for Trello. We included a little blurb about the project, a link to the spec in Confluence. The engineering work was happening on the core team board, so we linked to that project card from here. We also had a board with our long-term backlog and reference items specific to reactions, and the go-to-market board that we mentioned earlier. Of course, we linked to that here too. Every week, we updated the card as the project progressed. That way, everyone in the entire company, whether engineering, support, product, sales, design, doesn't matter, everyone could see everything going on at a glance. And best of all, when we finally launched emoji reactions and we posted the blog post, people started reacting from all over the company to celebrate our success.
So the thing is, shifting gears a little bit, sometimes you actually want to share information externally. Trello actually, and that's beyond the company, beyond your team, out with your users and developers and your community. And Trello shares a log of everything we ship on our public roadmap board. So this board is set to public so that all of our users can easily see what we shipped. We have lists dedicated to each quarter, and then every feature that comes out is broken down by quarter. So all of our users around the world can keep up to date with all the things that we're always putting out. See, in fact, there's actually a lot of companies that are building externally facing public Trello boards and roadmaps for their communities. And whether it's a user community or a developer community, here Twitch, a live streaming video game platform, they share what improvements are being worked on for their developer community. And they work by having a list of what's live, what's in progress, and also what features they're currently exploring adding to their developer community. Slack does this as well. As you can see here on this board, they actually kind of flip it. They have released at the end of their board, but they start with all their near-term, mid-term, and long-term projects so that anyone that's in the developer community can, at a glance, see where the status of all these improvements are happening. And I guess really, having a public roadmap it's an easy, lightweight, easy to update way to share important information with your customers. And we see these boards just get so much traffic all the time as they become to be a source that are relied on. And if you want to really learn more about how you can set up public roadmaps, once again, a shout out for Trello Day tomorrow. At 2:50, Bentley Cook is going to be talking about how you can engage communities with powerful public boards.
So Trello boards are even commonly used to discuss things and make more effective meetings. Discussion boards allow you to build structured meetings so that everyone knows what's going on and what's going to be discussed. When every card's been talked about, that's it. Your meeting's over. No more wasted time. Plus, it's a simple way to keep a historical record, meeting notes, and keep track of items that need follow-up, whether you were in the meeting or you missed it.
This is the Trello Town Hall board. It's for our monthly all-hands meeting. Each list represents the meeting for that month, including a list for the next town hall, and a record of the minutes. So we keep all of the lists for each town hall meeting on this board, allowing us to keep an archive of past meetings. Team members are encouraged to add a card for each agenda item and put their face on it. This democratizes the meeting process. And of course, we're able to attach any related files or documents that everyone can stay in the loop. When all the cards have been discussed, the meeting is just over. So we don't have wasted time, because we booked an hour-long meeting. Sometimes they're done in 30. We go through all the cards, and it's done. We use comments to take notes on what was discussed during the meeting for each item. And we also let teammates add comments asynchronously before or after the meeting to ask questions and keep the discussion going. It also makes it really easy for anyone at the meeting to come back and find what was previously discussed. Or if you missed the meeting because you're on vacation, you can check the board and see what happened while you were out.
So town halls are super big meetings, obviously, but the same basic concept works great for one-on-ones and every meeting in between. This board has a place for the team member and their manager to add goals, things to talk about, action items they want to work through together, and everything can be tracked in one easily accessible place.
This is your favorite subject.
Brian knows how much I love retrospectives, and my favorite way to facilitate them is using Trello. On the core team, we use a board just like this. Everyone adds cards before the meeting starts. We give a minute or two to add some more at the beginning of the meeting. We use 3 lists right now: things that went well, things that people want or need to change, and then we have a questions and discussions list to cover everything that doesn't really fit in the other 2 categories. When we're ready to get started, everyone reads their cards aloud, and then we use the voting power up to vote on the cards we think are most important to cover that day. We then talk through the cards, starting with the ones with the highest number of votes, and find action items we can take to improve the situation. We'll then revisit those action items in the following retro. What I love about this process in Trello is that everyone's speaking at least once. Everyone's able to write things down in their own words, and as a team, you get to talk about the most important things in whatever time you have for that retro that day. Critical for us, for sure, is that this is a remote-friendly process. It works just as well whether you're sitting right by each other in the same office or whether you're all around the entire globe. So I think there are a couple things to keep in mind about retros, and we only have a minute, although I could probably talk about them for an hour. But I want to just mention a couple things that I love about this. So first of all, always find improvements before moving on. Keep a written record, and revisit for accountability. If your team is actively trying to improve itself, this is an amazing process. And it's worked really great for us, and it's been a positive force for change. And what's more, Trello makes it really easy to tweak the process over time. Try out entirely new, different styles for your retro to have different techniques for talking about things together. Try it out and let me know how it goes.
And really the power of Trello is that you can mix and match any of these structures to build really the ultimate Trello board for your team. So perhaps you're tracking tasks for a project, but also have daily or weekly stand-ups. You can consider having your to-do doing done list structure on the board, but also maybe have a list or two to organize your meetings. Or maybe there's important resources to share with your team for your project or process. You can create a list for them just like you would a storage board. So you could have lists that are repositories of information and lists that are your process and your tasks all in one place, all accessible by everyone working together.
Do any of you guys plan events or meetups, maybe?
Got a couple.
Sweet. Whether it's a team retreat, a meetup group, or any other event, you can track everything that needs to be done before and after the event all in a Trello board.
But also, you can see here we have the resources list where everyone that's working on the event can access speaker information, get location details, etc. So no one has to dive into other documents or anything. It's all right there.
And of course, the same goes when you're planning a vacation after all that hard work. Here they have great lists for things that they're going to do before their trip, make sure they pack, stuff like that, things that are done already, and then lists that are more like categories of things they might do while they're in Hawaii, I guess, and things they might try to eat and drink. Super flexible. Whew, okay. So now that your mind is blown away from all the ways you can structure your Trello boards, and it's not even noon yet, you're probably wondering, how do I get there?
Don't worry, obviously we got you covered.
So here are some simple strategies to try out when you're setting up your boards. After you've created your board and picked a cool background, which is absolutely critical, take a moment to think about what you're going to be working on. Think about the 5 different types of boards that we've talked about today and the goals that you're trying to accomplish. Are there big phases or categories? Take a stab at creating lists for them.
So add a list for every major step in your process when tracking a project or workflow. If your process changes over time, it's easy to add more lists, change list names, or you can literally drag and drop them to rearrange them. Also, if you're a stakeholder at any point in the process, consider watching that list, which you can do from the Lists menu. And this means you'll get notified for any cards entering, exiting, or being updated on that list.
So getting everything together in Trello is super helpful. Think about what information you might want to store on the board. Maybe a learning section, a reference section, who's on the board, anything that you might want to reference on an ongoing basis at a glance.
And as mentioned before, keep information organized on your board with labels and stickers, which are a little more fun, if you ask me. You can utilize a card's checklists, attachments, and power-ups to make sure that all of the information surrounding a task is centralized on that card. And you can consider adding more structure to cards with the Custom Fields power-up, which will allow you to add custom data, numerical, text, and more to all of your cards on that board.
And most importantly, as your team grows and adapts to new ways of working, Trello can be updated to reflect those changes in seconds. The great thing about Trello is that if you need to rearrange your entire process, or maybe just add a new phase, it's often as simple as dragging and dropping a list or clicking and adding a new one. To show you how Trello boards change over time, I'll walk you through an offsite we recently had. And this is real, this really happened. When we started planning this thing, honestly, we didn't know much. We didn't know yet what the date was going to be or even who should attend. So we just started with a couple of lists. First, goals, most importantly, topics that we thought should be covered, and a sort of resources section. Then as dates were picked, we added lists for each day of the offsite, and we started moving topics to cover into those lists. In this case, it was a Monday through Friday. It was pretty big. And of course, everyone needs to eat, so naturally we added cards for meals too. We used stickers to visually distinguish the cards for when people were arriving, start times each day, meals, from the rest of the cards, which were more like agenda items. By the time the offsite started, everyone had added themselves to the cards that they were going to be attending, and we had a schedule we could all easily reference. And of course, since plans like this often need revisions along the way, and let me tell you, this offsite definitely did every day, Trello made it easy to refine and update day by day. We used this board intensively for the couple of weeks before the offsite, of course during the offsite itself, and because we added notes, reference materials, and pictures along the way, this board has been an amazing reference for us after the fact too. Things like photos of whiteboards and action items that we took as we went through the whole offsite.
Truth be told, we're really just like scratching the surface today with what you can do with Trello. And if you really want to learn some more ways you can bring Trello into your life, meet Trello users, and become a Trello pro, definitely join us tomorrow in room 10, all day for Trello Day. And also, please stop by the Trello booth in the expo room upstairs. We have a bunch of staff on hand that can really walk you through setting up any board for any workflow. We'll be glad to answer any of the questions that you have.
Finally, if you remember only one thing from this whole talk today, just remember that Trello can adapt to just about any workflow that you have, and as always, there's no wrong way to Trello.
Or more importantly, remember that this is Taco, our beloved spokes husky, who will be there all along your journey as you become a better Trello pro. So definitely sign up. It's totally free, or download on your mobile apps, iOS or Android. And yeah. Thank you. So I imagine we have, since we are New Yorkers and we speak way too fast, we have plenty of time for questions.
Hi. First, thank you for the talk because you made me think, and that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. A question that surely nobody has asked you before. How do you integrate all these with Jira and Confluence in such a way that you don't have redundancies? Because our UX designers are screaming at me for Trello. On the other side, we have Jira boards, we have Confluence pages. How do we make everything work in such a way that we do not compete or clash?
Yeah, we have never heard this question. No, just kidding. We hear this question all the time. So that happens a lot. I think different teams have different tools that they want to use. And one of the things that I think Trello does really well is it lets you bring all that stuff together. I feel like that's like the recurring thread throughout this whole talk today. So one thing we see people do a lot is, of course, linking to things. So sometimes this starts with one team using using Trello to say like start brainstorming or thinking through how they might solve a problem, kind of breaking things down into pieces. And then once engineering work is like really ready to get started, things are just, they link the cards. And then that way design can keep doing stuff in Trello and the engineers can keep using Jira and everything works well. And then of course, sometimes you're trying to show different levels of information. So more like the company overview board, but maybe for a department or a team in a particular country, I don't know. So that's another place that this comes in, where you have some people at the top of the organization, say like your CEO does not want to look at every single Jira ticket, probably, but might like to know like your epics that you have in Jira, for example. And so then maybe you might want to have the epics all in one Trello board, organized by category or by month when things are getting released. But you might have just a link to that one epic that links to all the other Jira tickets in there or something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and also power-ups. Power-ups are the way to integrate between apps. So Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket. We have native power-ups built for that will show the status of those, what's going on in Jira will show up in Trello. You can also embed Trello boards in Confluence Cloud, Bitbucket. And then there's also a power-up called Unito, which does kind of syncs. So it even removes redundancy even more in that you can set up syncs between your Jira projects and your Trello boards, and you can define what actions you want to sync, et cetera. So
I think some teams have found that it's really good to have everything synced entirely all along the way, and some teams find it more helpful to have a distinct phase in the process where things kind of move from one tool to the other tool, like a handoff from brainstorming into the backlog, or a handoff from design into engineering, and then from there, the other tool kind of takes over. So it really depends. I've tried it both ways, and different teams prefer different. Yeah. And you can come check out the booth upstairs with us, and then we will show you some boards with that really happening.
All right, how extensible is the API? So if to your point, we have lots of people using Jira. We have lots of design teams that don't like the Jira interface, but we want to have a common view, say from our intranet, where we can expose projects across multiple organizations to have a roll-up.
So full disclosure, I'm not an engineer, but I have only heard good things about the Trello API from our customers, from our Power Up developers. It's something that we're actively working on all the time. I'd say reach out to Bentley Cook, who is our developer advocate, and you can talk more about the nitty-gritty of exactly how our API works in a way that I can't do today. But we've seen teams do all sorts of things, like customized reporting, or exporting, or importing, or tracking, or syncing, you name it, teams are doing it.
And actually, Bentley Cook is here for this whole summit. So if you want to just chat with us after, we'll find out when he's going to be on the booth, and he can answer all of your API questions.
So you mentioned the marketing use case where you have a public board available. You mentioned traffic. What kind of data is available about how many of my viewers, users, et cetera, are going and interacting?
Ooh, so happy you asked that question. Jenny Marshall, a brand new PM at Trello, is working on building out that feature. So go chat with her after, and she will pick your brain, or you can pick hers, or both, hopefully.
All right, no more questions. Oh.
One more.
I was in favor for tracking project phases, but unfortunately a lot of people are still working with MS projects. So could you upload a small MS project file into a board in order to follow it up in a more fancy way than in MS project?
Wait, I'm so sorry, I missed the beginning of what you said.
Yeah, so
say that one more time.
Is it possible to upload a small MS project file, an Excel, into a board for tracking projects, that you don't have to retype everything what's in that MS project? That's not very handsome or useful for tracking. This way of tracking is much more powerful. But unfortunately, a lot of people are still using MS Project.
Yeah, first of all, I'm glad you think this is very powerful. I do too. So we don't have an importer technically, but what we do have is really easy copy and paste. So if you have a big Excel file that has tons and tons of rows in it, it's super easy to copy and paste. And when you go to paste into a list, it'll say, do you want to create 1 card or 1,000 cards? And you just click 1,000, and then whoop, like magic, they'll all expand. We've been thinking about building an importer, so come chat with me after. I'll pick your brain.
right,
Got,
thanks,
one
team.
more over there. This
We got time.
All the time in the world.
All the time in the world.
There were lots of great boards mentioned, and I would like to ask you if is there some special way to organize these boards so it's easy to find the board I'm looking for?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a few ways. So first of all, there's definitely a great team view. If you have all your boards in a team, when you only have a few boards, it's really easy. It's very visual to just see a grid of all the different boards and their backgrounds. For sure, when you upgrade to business class, you can use collections to sort all your boards into different categories, and then you can filter by those boards. We also sometimes see teams create a board that just houses other boards. It's very meta. But you might have what are all the teams in this, in our organization, and you might have cards that are just linking to other boards. So you could say all the engineering teams and then have a link to all of their team boards, or all of the resources teams and link to all their boards. Those are some big ways. What do you think?
Yeah, and then on a more personal level, I rely on starred boards. So you can, there's a little star up by the board title, and if you click that, it surfaces all your starred boards are at the top of your boards list or on the home screen, and they can be dragged and dropped into any order that you want. So I basically rely on that in my top level boards, working all the way down into my other projects. It's a great way to personally organize stuff.
Yeah.
Last two questions.
Hi, so we track goals in our team with Trello, but our director actually asked if there's a possibility that he can make cards private.
Yeah, so we've been asked this question before. One of the biggest kind of core principles of Trello is that everyone has a shared perspective. And there are definitely points where you're like, oh, I wish I could make this not a shared perspective. I wish I could make it shared for just these people and a different perspective for these people. But we really think that one of the things that keeps Trello really simple and easy for everyone to understand and use is that everyone sees the same thing at the same time. So in all the different updates that you see, if you change a background, it updates instantly for everybody. If you move a card, it's instant updates. There's no saving. And there's no different versions of that stuff. There's a couple things that are unique, we have a colorblind mode, for example, where if you are colorblind, that's a kind of a personal thing. But in general, that's one of the things we think keeps Trello really simple to use. So that's not something we're doing right now.
My question is around, so I'm a big Trello fan. I use it personally. I'm trying to use it in work, or trying to get our company to invest in it. But ultimately, when I try to sell the product to somebody who's never used it before, I use a total of, I just counted it, 5 Chrome extensions to customize it to do stuff that it can't do itself, from hiding complete lists to actually, on a large screen, being able to move lists underneath each other and not just left to right. So it makes it difficult for me to sell it internally when I say it's great after you install these 5 Chrome extensions. Do you have any plans for looking at the Chrome extensions that exist and maybe actually implementing some of the stuff that's there? Some of it is very basic, just got to do with automatic ordering, but yet the product doesn't deliver it.
Great question. So we are always looking at what's going on around us. We're talking to users and just like this. We're always looking at what the most popular Chrome extensions are, just listening to users however we can, and that's definitely one way. There are some things that we get asked for, similar to making specific cards private, where we understand that if we're trying to make a shared perspective and everyone sees the same thing and it's very easy for anyone in your department to use, or outside of your department, like parents or your kids, that there are certain things that we want to do to keep Trello really, really simple. So some things we may not build, some things we allow partners to build, and so partners will build power-ups, but they'll be native to the experience. So it really just depends on exactly what we're talking about, but definitely always looking at what's going on around us and trying to prioritize something that makes sense for the product.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, power-ups are really where we see, at Trello boards or boards listing cards, and we want everyone in an organization, can be able to use that fundamental structure, and then power-ups are where you can kind of create those verticals for your specific unique use cases. So we feel like that's one of its strengths, and that's where we're looking with partnering with a lot more people, releasing more integrations, and incorporating more features that people need for specific board types in that sense.
And we have what, is it over 100 power-ups now?
Yeah.
Something like that? I can't even give up, honestly.
All right, that is the end of our session today. If you would please take the survey at the end in the Summit app to let Jess and Brian know how they did. Our next collaboration and tools track talk will be about Confluence templates in room 4. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks
guys.
everyone.